My guest today is Yochai Greenberg, a lifelong technologist, Frontline Cyber Defender, and founder and ex-CTO of Nano Cyber Solutions. Yochai was an early adopter of LimaCharlie, and as such, I've had many occasions to interact with him over the years. He has a very wide breadth of knowledge and isn't shy about sharing his opinions. I'm looking forward to chatting about a wide variety of subjects with him on today's show. Thanks for being with us, Yochai. It's really great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I think I wanted to have this conversation for a long time, so thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you here. And, on the show, I'm always interested in people's genesis story. I know you took a really interesting path to where you are today. What initially got you interested in computers, and how did that turn into a career in cybersecurity?
Yeah. I think my origin story is a little bit strange. So I grew up in Israel, and I think my first computer was an XT. and that was the only computer I had. And obviously I destroyed it for my father, and we didn't have money to fix it. So I had to go and fix it. That's one of my memories of it. And since then, for me, it was always computer. And, as computer grew, I grew playing Doom, playing, the games, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. I just loved computer games, and I love cracking software eventually. And that led to other things, and that led to always studying and understanding what's going on, and always understanding what the computer is doing, and more into it. And then playing with other things and playing with friends and doing stuff with computers. And, when I moved to the United States in my early 20s, I just had a lot of knowledge in computers. Whether it's how to change stuff on a computer, or how to investigate everything happening on a computer. What I didn't have is any professional understanding of it. I didn't know how things are called. What was the naming? So I moved here, and I worked in various jobs, and all the time I dealt with computers. And as a hobby, it was always a hobby for me. And I used to do private security, physical, and one of my clients, their friends got hit. Someone hacked them, and they didn't know what to do about it. And they told them, guys, have you ever heard of a firewall? And that thing led to another, and I opened an IT company, and I started, diving into the professional aspect of forensics, because that was always my thing. And I think when you know how a computer works, there's a big difference between knowing how a computer works and how to write a report about how it works and what were your findings. So I had to learn that part more than how to find stuff. And, from there, I used to do forensics, and I used to do more investigations. I had an IT company. I sold the IT company and opened a cybersecurity company, because I wanted to, during the time having an IT company and everything happened, I realized that small businesses don't have any cybersecurity whatsoever. So I decided to try and give them the best protection for the price. And I opened a cybersecurity company. It was Nano Cyber Solutions, to give them that SOC and I'll say a higher level of security, not just back then there weren't any MDRs, but not just an MDR, but a 24/7 SOC that someone can answer them for any question they have, and really dig into any event, not just by, finding a virus. Mm-hmm. And that one thing led to another. And now I'm here.
Here you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
And throughout your career, like you said, you've provided cybersecurity services to a wide variety of small and medium-sized businesses. What are the biggest threats that you're seeing across the landscape today?
So it's always ransomware, I guess. In many ways, ransomware, hasn't changed. I think when you look, especially in smaller businesses, I see a few things. First of all, you cannot separate what's happening in the world to any kind of business. So when, for example, I used to do a lot of, again, as an Israeli, I used to have a lot of Israeli clients. I would see a lot of attacks coming from Iran or any kind of hacking activity from countries hostile to Israel, looking for businesses run by Israelis. But, and I think ransomware has evolved to a place today that it affects small businesses in a different way rather than larger enterprises, because small businesses, a lot of time the IT doesn't know how to deal with the incident response, so they just replace all the computers. They have a backup somewhere, even if it's a month old, they'll survive. Mm-hmm. But the ransomware, the way it affects it is by they're stealing a lot of data. They're stealing a lot of data and they publish it. And some of them, especially CPAs or law firms that are smaller, they have to go and deal with their clients and deal with all of that. So that's another layer that I see becoming more and more popular. Beside that, for small businesses, especially in medium, inside threat, always been an issue. And always been an issue. Also phishing, especially with generative AI, becoming more, more convincing, especially fraud. But at the end of the day, it's becoming, it's becoming a little bit more complicated. I see more companies sending money because the fraud notes are so good. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing that I see the threats happening today, especially in smaller businesses. Larger enterprises, it's a different story, although they have all three also.
Yeah, I've heard from many people that extortion is becoming a bigger and bigger part of that ransomware negotiation. And like you said, I think it was pretty easy to spot phishing emails before because the spelling or the language would be a little bit off. It just wouldn't quite sound right. And now with the LLMs and stuff, it's really easy to create something that sounds super professional, even if that's not your first language.
Yeah. I think actually it's something that I always like to admire when how they use, how it evolves. It always evolves. And sometimes you look at the exchange and you go, this is brilliant. This is just brilliant.
Yeah. Overall, do you think things are getting better or worse?
Worse. But it's a mixed bag. I think in many ways, machine learning, the defending point is becoming more decent. So sometimes it will be a little bit more difficult. If, the small business has decent protection, it will be a little bit more difficult in many ways. So the attackers have to be a little bit more sophisticated. So you have that, cat and mouse game. So generally speaking, it becomes worse.
If you look back over your career, which I think spans the last 15 years, at least in cybersecurity, what are the biggest changes have you seen in that time? Like on the vendor side or the attacker side? Like what's different now than from when you started?
So obviously for attackers, I think something that will hunt us down for a long time is, you have ransomware as a service. Whoever thought of that before? Someone is creating the service and then selling it to other, entities that do the attacks and collect the money, and they're getting paid for that. This is, I think in many ways hasn't changed that much, but it's becoming more and more professional. Look at all the ransomware groups, all the attack groups. They become more like corporations. Yeah. So they become more professional. Time passes by. The other major change is that, a lot of groups are using data to extort other companies or people, which is fairly new to an extent. It's in, it's the next evolution of ransomware. And that's a big thing. I think the next evolution will be wiper software. They will wipe your computer and extort you for data that they pulled out of your machines. Mm-hmm. And obviously, it's not a new thing, but as time passes by and everything becomes more and more sophisticated, supply chain attacks are a major factor, and it's a major change. Don't look for the bigger target, look for the smaller links in the chain and abuse the trust there, and then abuse the trust on the next link, and then abuse the trust and go one step at a time to reach your bigger target. Mm-hmm. I think in many ways, supply chain attacks are the biggest challenge the cybersecurity industry has. From defending point of view, so I think the biggest change is the availability and cost of defending or protection tools. It used to be much more expensive. And when I say used to be, I mean 4 years ago. So I think today we have more tools, although a lot of them are the same, but in essence, but they're more affordable and they're more available. I think today it's easier for even the end user to call Sentinel-1 and get the AV than it was 4 years ago for an IT company to come and then understand what they're doing. You know, I had a potential client of 4 or 5 years ago, and they had silence installed and they didn't even know what to do with it. I think that has changed drastically. Also, the cost of storage, that changes all the time. Storage used to be extremely expensive. And, you know, you can build cyber tools based on your storage, which was more expensive back then. And obviously, you know, when I look at it, back in the day, what we had, if you wanted a SOC that you built, you had to go open source. You know, you had Nextron, which rest in peace. You had ELSA, you had EntopNG, OffSec, Snort. You had to figure it all out. Yep. You know, you had Security Onion, yourself, Security Onion, which is an amazing software, but you had to really figure it out what you want to do. But it was your imagination. When I started working with LimaCharlie, was still on GitHub. And you know, it was, I remember I was doing research. It was LimaCharlie, it was Mig from Mozilla. It was, I don't think there was, and OSSEC, obviously, which turned into Wazoo. So you have more options today. I'm just thinking, just had a meeting earlier. You can literally buy a Falcon from CrowdStrike for $5 a month per endpoint. Mm-hmm. And you already have the ADR and access and, you know, and AV, or you can buy LimaCharlie and build your own infrastructure on top of that, which is a huge money saver. So that has changed drastically. You know, it's definitely not the same. And for that, you know, I think, we're lucky.
Yeah. The market kind of has led towards that democratization of the tools. And I also think that we're seeing cybersecurity look more and more like an engineering profession than in the past, where it was kind of the realm of the wizards and the hackers and the hoodies and all that stuff.
Yep. I agree with you. Yeah. Look, personally, I don't think it was ever hackers in hoodies and, you know, sitting in the mother's basement. Yeah. It has changed. I think there's one thing that has changed drastically, and that's on an attacker point of view. And actually, I'll talk about it later. But, you know, we as cyber defenders, attackers, doesn't matter. We used to look at script kiddies and you say, and look at them in a bad way. You know, these guys just using tools. I think in many ways, this industry has turned into a script kiddie industry, both attacking and defending. And that's a dangerous thing, you know, because the tools you have today, the tools that you can get today and the amount of knowledge you need to apply, either good or bad, the tools are amazing. You have such great variety, and the knowledge is limited than you used to have before. Mm. So I think that has changed drastically. And I think, by the way, that will impact the entire industry for the next 10 years, at least.
You made an interesting observation previously when we were chatting, and that was that as defenders, we're modeling our threats based on past events and not making future predictions. Can you elaborate on that line of thinking, and what can we do to be prepared for threats that don't exist yet?
So, first of all, yes, I think every military, let's go into every military, always trains to the past wars and not the future war, because you can't predict what going to be the next war. And as defenders, you know, we are a civilian service, but we are, in many ways, there's not a big difference between, you know, protecting a business cyber-wise and protecting a military base. The terminology might be different, but it's all the same. You know, look at the attackers versus intruders in real life. You have people gathering intel, finding a weak link, they go into. Same as defenders. You have walls, firewalls, you have chains, fences, whatever you need. You have a SOC, you have a SOC in a base, checking for all the sensors. The way we can protect anything that doesn't exist is, my opinion is that you always need to think, you know, like a hacker. Like, how would I gain access here, like to my target, not in, penetration testing and all of that, but always think about what is the next move. And you always have to have your finger, like checking your pulse to see, any new kind of, any new, proof of concept, any new exploits, any new ways of doing stuff. You can't say, well, today I'm going to take a break from that. So you always have to make sure you're part of the game, because getting ahead of the game, it will be very difficult unless you're going to open your own attacking business and create the future. But that's part of, the way they gather intel, we as defenders need to also gather that intel. Mm-hmm. It never ends.
Yeah. So just staying up to date with the newest stuff you see coming through.
Yeah. And behavior analysis. Always do behavior analysis.
I was going to say, we've talked a lot about different tools and technologies. Off the top of my head, I can think we have EDR, XDR, SIM, SOAR, AV. In your opinion, do we need all those? And if so, what are the must-haves and what are the nice-to-haves?
Well, you know my answer already. Yeah, you've known me for too long. Do we need all of those? My opinion, no. I think today we're in a place where, SIM, SOAR, XDR is more or less the same. They do the same. Yes, in the beginning they had specific concept behind them, but the people that build XDRs, they saw what SOAR did and they added it, and so what SIM did and added it, and vice versa. So it's all the same. What's nice to have it based on your infrastructure and the people working with you, whatever is comfortable for you. It's not I don't think there is a must on anything, as long as you have the people that know how to, to analyze it. I think it's important to have tools that can give you the IR capability when something happens, and have the people that know how to analyze those IR capabilities. But I can't tell you what is nice to have. You have to have an EDR, obviously, because it tells you what's happening. Everything else, it's based on your environment. And an AV, you need an AV still, sure.
Okay, that's interesting. I haven't heard a lot of people place that one up as high importance, but I guess it takes a lot of the detection responsibility off the shoulders of the engineers.
Sure. Why would you deal with everything happening? And, if at least you have something that can deal with whatever signatures that they already know.
So do you think that modern AV is a replacement for an EDR, or do we still need them both?
You need them both. I think an AV is an AV, EDR is EDR. Having an AV with EDR capabilities is nice. I see EDR as more as an investigation tool than just finding a process running and isolating it. So I think AV is important, especially on the basic layer. Have something that will run through the signature. EDR is important. Having both together is important, but you can't say, okay, I have this advanced AV with EDR. I don't need an EDR anymore. If you have analysts, you need an EDR.
Right.
Yeah.
This one's a little more philosophical, and I'm curious what you think. What's more important, spending your effort to actively protect an organization, or putting those resources towards hardening and having a good IR plan in place?
Yeah. You look, it's philosophical, as you said. You can protect your business as much as you want. There is always a chance you're going to get hacked. And for that, you should have as much hardening and IR plan in place. I think, again, it depends on the manpower you have. If you have the people that can do the IR, and it's not going to be something that will get you bankrupt, definitely. But if you don't have, put as much effort to protect your organization, and then find, whether it's cyber insurance or anything, we'll find a way of hiring those people. But you definitely need to have a mix of both.
Yeah, one can't exist in isolation. They need to be some combination of the two.
Yep.
So I don't want to turn this interview into a commercial for LimaCharlie's SecOps cloud platform, but you've been a user for almost 5 years now. Can you speak to your experience and what you think of the engineering approach to solving the problems faced by security professionals?
Of course. First of all, I'll have to correct you. I've been a user of LimaCharlie, I want to say 8 years now, before it was even the LimaCharlie we all know and love today.
Back in the open source days.
Back in the open source days. So I think, and this is the reason why I really love LimaCharlie, and I've been, I've been with you guys since day one. I think there is no perfect tool, or there is no perfect approach. Never. I've never seen anything that I said, that's it. I'm done. I have everything I need right here. There are many tools. There's many approaches. And I think what I love about LimaCharlie is that at the end of the day, you can build your own environment based on your approach. I don't think what I build for my clients and I train my guys will work for everyone that comes afterwards and go and use the same tools and environment, but it works for us. And in the whole game of mix and match and what do I want to add? How do I want to use something? I think LimaCharlie is probably one of the best tools I ever used. More than that, as far as an IR tool, as someone that comes from forensics, and I always see cyber as an IR first approach, I think LimaCharlie is one of the best IR tools out there, because it gives you all the data you need when everything happens at the same time. You don't have to go from, okay, you know what, I'll use my EDR and then I'll jump into my IR environment and back and forth. You have everything that you need. It takes minutes to understand an incident, even if you don't have any background knowledge of it, because the vast data you have. And as a cyber engineer, I can take all of that and build whatever I want on top of that and add whatever I want to add on top of that. And that makes it a hell of a tool, in my opinion.
No, I appreciate that. And it's nice to hear it's working as intended. So what do you think of the vendor market? Is marketing ruining cybersecurity, or do you think we're doing a better job now than we have in the past?
I want to say pass, but it's I don't want people to see it from any vendor and go like, I don't like this guy. I look, cybersecurity is a business that you have a lot of tools, and a lot of them do the exact same thing. They just look different. Mm-hmm. And I never had issues with any tool. I think the tools are great. I had issues with people claiming their tools do things that they don't do. And because of that, companies get hacked. If you sell a tool that you sell it as it can do anything without human intervention, you're lying to your designated clients. Is marketing ruining cybersecurity? I don't think it's a fair assessment, because marketing is an essential tool for anything, and you cannot have any business without marketing. But, but again, and I think Ross from LimaCharlie always talks about it. It's such an industry that most consumers do not understand what they're buying into, that it creates anomalies. And those anomalies is, like, for example, when you think of cybersecurity companies, you think of CrowdStrike, you think of SentinelOne, you think of, McAfee, if whatever reasons. You think of Norton, whatever, what's their name? I forgot their name right now. Symantec. You think of those companies, but those are software companies. What they do is that they build software. Cybersecurity is the product that they're selling with their software. And having a software in cybersecurity won't fix your issues. It might make you safer for a while, but it's not going to fix the problem. And the marketing goes as, buy this software, you'll be protected. Or you know what, buy this software to be on top of that, you'll be protected. Or buy this software, you'll be protected. Or you need to add all this software into one panel, then you'll be protected. You know what? You need automation on top of that panel, and then you'll be protected. But it's all good. But what they don't tell you is that, oh, I forgot to tell you, you need to hire at least 5 people to monitor all these softwares together. To see what's false positive, whether it's real or not, will it affect us? So marketing is an essential tool in any business, but in the cybersecurity thing, because again, the clients, the end users don't know what's happening. I feel like a lot of times, companies sell miracles, and people in this industry know that there's no miracles. So,
do you have any advice for vendors out there trying to sell directly to practitioners like yourself?
Yeah, let us play with it. Don't give me a demo. I don't care. Let me play with it. Let me see what the lab is meaningless for me. Let me see it in production. I'll have a small production environment. Let me check it out. I know companies, some of them are brand new, and they'll do wonders because they give me access to their tools. And I go back to them and I say, you know what? I love it. Or you know what? Here's tiny change. Or, one of the reasons why I love you guys, we've been talking for the last 8 years, back and forth. And that's how any relationship with a product company should be. Let's make it easier, better. Yes, no, it's always a conversation. That's definitely my best advice. If you think your product is good, give it to me.
Yeah.
And don't lie to me. I really don't lie to me. Like I don't care if you're using open source tool and building a nice GUI on top of that. Just be honest, be frank. I'll just say this, one of the main reasons why I opened Nano, because I had a long time ago, I had a client, and he thought, it wasn't a big company. It was a small construction company. But they were making a lot of money. And he thought someone hired a hacker to steal his leads. And I started calling companies. I'm not going to mention them right now, but no one helped me. No one will give me a solution. No one will give me any software because they had only 10 employees. Now, granted, I'm talking about 2016 or something, 2015. And no one would have helped me. And one of those companies that people love, and I don't know, love much love, but they're pretty big right now today. They just started back then. And, and their marketing was, we do packet inspection, we do this, we do that, we do that. And I asked them some questions, and the salesperson couldn't answer. So she passed me to the sales engineer a few days later. And I started asking all these questions, packet inspection and everything. And he said, no, we don't do that. We don't do any of that. And I started talking to him, like more and more what they do. And back then, all they did was DNS inspection, which is fine, but just be front about that. We don't have to go through the whole process to find out that everything you're selling is not true. That's something that I think can always be better.
Okay, this is the last one I have for you. It's the one I ask of everyone that comes on the show. It can be as wide or as narrow as you want. Do you have any predictions for the future of cybersecurity?
I don't know. I don't want to predict anything, but I think there's 2 things that we have to look into consideration when we think about cybersecurity. We cannot ignore the elephant in the room, which is generative AI. I think generative AI is a blessing and a curse. But it's the future, and it can do our job much easier. It will never replace any of us, I'm not going to say never, but in the near future, it's not going to replace us. Yeah. But it makes us do our job more efficiently, better, but it's a hell of an attacking tool. So that's one thing that I see is going to affect us all. The other thing is, I really do think that the gap between script kiddies and, hackers that write their own payload the gap is going to get narrower and narrower, because one, you can use generative AI to generate payloads and it will be amazing. And 2, the availability of tools and the things that they can get on Telegram and other places. You don't need to be an amazing, programmer writing exploits, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think that will definitely affect all of us, because in one end, it's a little bit more difficult to hack companies, but in the other, if you know how the supply chain works and you have just script kiddies, you could probably do more damage than ever today, and it's just going to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this is a great conversation, Yochai. Thanks so much for coming on the show and chatting with me, and for being a longtime supporter of LimaCharlie. It's been really great knowing you over the years, and I look forward to many more.
Thank you, Christopher. It was my pleasure.